watching Real Simple News with Kayla McCullough on Monday, August 10th, 2020. And today in batshit crazy land, race riots have erupted again all around the country. But I could only fit one city on the title here. So I put Chicago because it was one of the more interesting ones. But fear not, they were all actually very interesting. Also, China has put sanctions on 6 Republican senators and has raided a pro-democracy newspaper and arrested multiple pro-democracy Hong Kong dissidents. Real Simple News is an open source news organization. You can find us on GitHub at github.com/Real Simple News. But it's a little bit complicated to get there. It's going to be a lot easier for you to find it at realsimplenews.net/issue 73 for this show. If you find any sort of factual errors in the show, you can find a link to the show, the issue ticket, where you can submit comments. And we are seeking the truth always. And also, too, you can make a donation to Real Simple News through that website, through the PayPal button. But the best thing that you can do is to share this video so that we can share the message with people. I am a shadow banned conservative journalist. And so we do need help getting the message out to get past the Facebook antitrust firewall. And this next story from the lovely post-millennial in Portland. Looting and riots have erupted overnight in Chicago. Bridges raised as violence continue. Looting and rioting in downtown Chicago last night was rampant for at least 5 hours in the city before law enforcement were able to regain control. This was allegedly in response to reports of quote-unquote police-involved shooting earlier in the day. Reports from police scanners in Chicago began tweeting out the presence of looters in Saks Fifth Avenue and other upscale stores in Magnificent Mile downtown around 12:30 a.m. Windows were smashed and looting was rampant as rioters confronted police. Gunfire was exchanged between looters and police at 40:30 a.m. The looting had been going on for nearly 5 hours, according to the Chicago Tribune. Here's a tweet from Ian Miles Chong at Still Gray. There's still literally hundreds of looters in Chicago right now, hitting up all the stores. And these are the people that we call hood Democrats. They're low-income, big city people who vote for Democrats. They typically have very low GPAs and high crime and drug abuse rates and violence rates. There they are. What were they breaking into? What did they break into? A Tesla place, the Apple store. We'll get there. All right, and here's this next. It says. Caravans full of people were reportedly seen dropping people off, increasing the size of the crowd. People could be seen carrying looted items, everything from shoes to televisions. Even a U-Haul moving van was observed. Some threw rocks at cop cars, and police report that many arrests were made.
Silly though. I'm gonna fuck what they say.
Here's a tweet from at
We go crazy.
Go
Man.
Princess.
Real. Motherfuckers think they know. I really don't though. Bro, this shit is so crazy. On Stone, we like living in a whole apocalyptic world. Motherfucking 2020, boy. Look.
They fucked up Saks and Gucci, y'all.
Okay, so the thing that is extremely confusing about this, like, I don't understand at all, is this is like the worst that we've ever had. When it comes to rioting, we've never really experienced any sort of level of rioting like this. As far as I'm aware, please correct me if I'm wrong on issue 73 on the Real Simple News GitHub repository. And but the level of hate in our country is like the lowest it's been. But the violence is all coming, like most of the murders are from black people. There's like almost 20,000 murders per year, and most of them are committed by black people. Like half of them, sorry, not most, half of them. Let's go to this next tweet here from another one from @GoPrincess of the Hood Democrat looting. Doesn't appear to have any audio on it. Public transit was suspended and Illinois State Police shut down after some off-ramps from local highways. Hold on. And they shut off some local ramps from local highways. Drawbridges were lifted across the Chicago River, save for one that was designated for emergency vehicles. Don't know if that's ever happened before. If you know, comment on issue 73 on GitHub. This next tweet is from Tim Crimmins. It says, it's depressing how ritualized it is now. Jerks seizing on a pretext, in this case, a goddamn shootout in Eaglewood, to set off a predictable chain of events culminating in mass shooting and violence, cycle made possible by corrupt and paternalistic media. Paternalistic media. So this is a video of what? It's the cops. So if I like make friends with these people and bring them over to my house, are they going to do this at my house? You know, that's a pretty good question. I would like to know. Definitely never coming to my house. That's for sure. Because they keep complaining about racism. Like, white man's got me down. And then, like, they do stuff like this, and you're like, why would anybody hire you if they would never allow you at their house? Well, hold on. A lot of people would hire you without letting you at their house. Why on earth, if somebody would not want you near their house, like even just to stop by, why would you? Because you're so violent. I mean, and your group of people's known for stealing stuff. I mean, how is that racism? You should comment on issue ticket 73 on the Real Simple News repository. Let's go down to here to another one. What happened to the post-millennial article? Is it still over there? Okay. What else is in there? People were calm as they took off their newly looted merchandise out of the stores. Looters in Chicago calmly walked in and out of the businesses with the merchandise at the BLM Antifa Nazi riot. No, this wasn't a BLM Antifa Nazi riot. This was just a hood Democrat riot and looting. Live stream captured additional looting, people looking for each other within the crowd. This tweet from @WolfMonkey says, live stream footage of looters casually walking around downtown Chicago late in the morning as they carry around various shoes and clothing from the store. Because they can't breathe.
It's all the way at the top. It's all right here.
So, in my world, this kind of stuff is just completely like bonkers, man. Like, you would never ever get a job from me if you're putting off the vibe like you might be with these people. A lot of African Americans are saying they're getting discriminated against based upon their name. And studies have shown that actually, it turns out it's actually your first name that they discriminate against. That if your name is Leroy, depending on where you live at in the country, your resume has an equal chance of going to the trash can as watermelon, because your first name might be indicative of your parents, where they grew up at and their education level. Somebody might think Leroy is a person from the country that doesn't know much. They're just going to stereotype him as a hick. It happens to pretty much anybody. But if you use just your last name on your resume, people don't stereotype you. But if you do behave like this, you're definitely not going to be getting the job. This next tweet from Mr. Andy No: looters break into a grocery store during the Chicago race riots.
Get here. Free fucking groceries, dude.
Nothing is free.
And jewels. They in that bitch. Damn, he spray painting shit. See, the black motherfuckers don't do that shit. It's these motherfuckers, man. You see them? Come on, bro.
Didn't know about
Get
that.
your goofy ass out of here, bro.
They're all in on it, man. You can't just shift blame. Oh, it's the white dude. Oh, just
Look at
the
this
white
man.
dude, dude.
Fuck 12.
All right. The Tesla dealership was also broken into. And here is the Chicago Mayhem gunshots ring out downtown. What was there, like two things about? I couldn't tell. One industrious person used their car to break into a shop.
We gotta be a screamer! Woo! Get me out! That shit!
Woo!
We good.
Next tweet from DJ Tech says, bugged out. Chicago.
This is why I don't keep my I-8 downtown. I keep my I-8 in a storage unit because these kids, look at these kids, man. They are vamping. They got some store. Yo, they bugged out, yo. These kids are bugged out. The shop's at the North Bridge.
All right. You hear the tweet from DJ Tech. The Chicago riots tried to run over the police.
Oh shit! The cops. Oh shit! This is gonna get ugly. This is gonna get ugly.
Well, that wasn't a very good place to go about doing that at.
They beat the shit out of his car, yo. They broke all his back windows and everything. Yo, they wildin', yo. This is my time to bounce. People are willing to commit homicide with vehicles out here. This is exactly why I moved my truck.
Where's that one? Here's this next one.
Y'all always shooting black people for no reason.
Blue underscore criminal V. My video shows people yelling at police because they believe
a young ass boy.
they don't quote me. They shoot and killed a 15-year-old girl that sparked all this up. Well, CMW. We will probably be seeing more riots and protests because of this. Wrong button.
Damn!
Whoa, there it goes.
Damn! They get wilder! Fuck about Liddy. Oh, what?
See, this is an example of when Facebook would be perfectly within its scope to remove misinformation from its platform. But more about that in some coming articles to come about antitrust with Facebook. Anything else? A police involved shooting took place Sunday afternoon about 2:30, August 9th, near the 5700 block of S. Rakeen in Chicago. Deputy Chief Yolanda Talley, who spoke to press, said that police had been called to the scene due to the reports of a man with a gun. And during a pursuit. The young man fired on the police. Police responded with fire as well. The man was taken into custody and on to the University of Chicago hospital for treatment. A gun was recovered from the scene. 3 officers were involved in the shooting, were also taken to the hospital at the time, though Talley said that was for observation only and they were not hit by gunfire. Talley was asked by press on the scene as to an accident that happened with the police in the aftermath of the arrest. She said that the emotions were really high and it happened approximately an hour after the shooting. It happened while the crime scene was getting processed, where we were holding our line. If there was no crime in the scene, we wouldn't have been there. Armando L. Sanchez, photojournalist for the Chicago Tribune, shared this scene near 57th and Aberdeen following police-involved shooting in Chicago. So mass people swarmed up because they were sharing it on Facebook. Seems to be a pattern. In the results after that, police were investigating the crime scene, said that one agitator instigated one big crowd that had gathered. An officer was injured by the crowd and taken to the hospital with a shoulder injury. Officers were maced and the window of a police car was smashed out with one brick. A reporter asked Talley about an account of one man who had been shooting the scene on his cell phone, who claimed the police had taken that phone from him. When asked if she would address that, Talley said, "I will address that. He has his phone. There was no body cam footage shot. We'll make 2 arrests related to the crowd," she said. Sorry, we made 2 arrests related to the crowd. When asked if there was anything she wanted to say to the community, Talley said, "I think people should take a step back. We've been having a lot of protests. Some things have been legitimate protests. Some things have been not legitimate. Not legitimate would be like the death of George Floyd because he had 11 nanograms per milliliter of fentanyl in his blood, and a lethal dose is 0.75 nanograms per milliliter of blood. So he had 14 lethal doses of fentanyl in his system. And I've been arguing with people on Facebook. People still actually believe that George Floyd was killed by Officer Chauvin. We'll see in the body cam footage here in just a little bit, so stay tuned. So this is a very long article. I'm going to let you read the rest of the article. Subscribe to the Post Millennial. And let's see, that blows through all of these things. I just found that article like right before it came out. Here is BLM Chai Solidarity rally for the shooting last night. Oh yeah, actually I found some other cool videos I guess we didn't get to see. What you do when you're a ninja. No. Dang it. Well, yeah, looks like we might be SLL on the Twitter. Nope. I think it was just that one video, actually. So here, this tweet is from @DigitalForest. If you vote for a Democrat to run your city, you'll be voting for total anarchy. I definitely completely agree. More looting from hood Democrats.
My phone's gonna die too.
So I'm going to make a assumption. Here's the aftermath of the riot. So my assumption is that almost all of the people that you've seen looting and rioting so far all complain about how they're not rich and how the white man is holding them and the wham man down. And I got $100 that says that almost every single one of those people is also too complaining that they would have to work 2 jobs if they have a job. They're complaining that they have to work 2 jobs. And they're also complaining that they're not rich and that the white man is holding them down while they're out doing this stuff. And let me enlighten you as to how the world works. If you want to be rich, you're going to need to have a lot more than 2 jobs. This next article from the New York Post. New police footage shows the first complete view of George Floyd's death. What is this? That wasn't the one that we were looking for, right? No, we were looking for the one at the bottom, right? Or was that it?
All right.
All right. It's 2 minutes, 36 seconds. This is the store that George Floyd passed off the counterfeit $20 bill at.
Before they drive off, they act like it's a fake bill from the gentleman.
I mean, this is how you know George Floyd is really fucked up, because he's still sitting out there in the car.
All right.
Busting George Floyd was not very difficult.
Let me see your hands.
I mean, for real, you're just going to pass off a counterfeit $20 bill?
Your other hand. Both hands.
And then just sit there in the car after you stole cigarettes?
Right now. Let me see your other hand. Put your hand up there. Put your hand up there. Jesus Christ. Keep your hands on the wheel. Keep your hands on the wheel.
Did you say I got shot?
What are you on something right now?
No, nothing. Because you act erratic.
Let's go.
Woo!
Let's go.
Yes. Please, man. Please don't do this. Take a seat. I'm going in, Mr. Officer. I'm going in. No, you're not. I got to go in. Take a seat.
Grab a seat, man.
Man, y'all don't believe me, Mr. Officer.
Take a seat.
I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of guy, man.
Take a seat.
Y'all, I'm going to die in here.
Take a seat.
I'm going to die, man.
You need to take a seat right now.
And I just had COVID, man. I don't want to go back to that.
Okay, I'll roll the windows
No.
down. Hey,
Yes.
listen.
Dang, man.
Listen.
I had COVID, man. I can't breathe. I
Take
can't
a seat.
breathe.
See, clearly,
Please, man.
George Floyd saying I can't breathe.
You want to jail?
He's under arrest right now for forgery.
I'll tell you.
Can we figure out what's going on?
Forgery for what? Take him out. For what? Please, man. I can't breathe.
Here, come on out.
Look at you. Thank you.
Yeah, just when you get up on the ground. I appreciate that. I do.
You got your restraint? Hobble. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Jesus Christ. I can't breathe.
Thank you.
I can't breathe.
Stop moving.
Mama. Mama.
Yeah.
Mama.
Show me your hands. Show me your hands.
Now, I remember if you guys watched Real Simple News last week, we showed you that lunatic woman from at the Portland race riots that was, she was yelling about how George Floyd couldn't breathe and he was calling for his mama. And obviously that woman has never gotten into a fight and been choked out by somebody, because that period of time right there was absolutely not long enough of a period of time to be choked out. Not in any way, shape, or form. George Floyd's a very big guy. If you look here, let's look at the what was this thing? I think that slide was actually out of order. Where did the other one go? For a YouTube video. Well, here, let me grab it for you.
It's a Monday for the ambulance to arrive.
Right. Here's the other perspective. I want you to notice George Floyd dies in the ambulance.
According to the
of a heart
complaints
attack.
against the officers, Lane asks him
Not
twice if
here,
he should roll Floyd
on the
onto
ground
his
where
side.
everybody thinks that he
Chauvin
died.
says no. 20 minutes into the arrest, an ambulance arrives on the scene.
Get off of his neck!
The EMTs check Floyd's pulse.
Are you serious?
Chauvin keeps his knee on Floyd's neck for almost another whole minute, even though Floyd appears completely unresponsive. He only gets off once the EMTs tell him to. Chauvin's kept his knee on Floyd's neck for a total of 8 minutes and 46 seconds, according to the complaint filed against him. Floyd is loaded into the ambulance. The ambulance leaves the scene, possibly because a crowd is forming, but the EMTs call for additional medical help from the fire department.
You added fire to your run?
But when the engine arrives, the officers give them, quote, no clear info on Floyd or his whereabouts, according to a fire department incident report. This delays their ability to help the paramedics. Meanwhile, Floyd is going into cardiac arrest.
320, if you could let MFD know that EMS needs to, fire needs to go to Parking 36, your patient is a full arrest now.
It takes the engine 5 minutes to reach Floyd and the ambulance. He's pronounced dead at a nearby hospital around 9:25 p.m. Preliminary autopsies conducted by the state and Floyd's family both ruled his death a homicide. The widely circulated arrest videos don't paint the entire picture of what happened to George Floyd. Additional video and audio from the body cameras of the key officers would reveal more about why the struggle began and how it escalated. The city quickly fired all 4 officers, and Chauvin has been charged with second-degree murder. Thomas Lane, J. Alexander Koenig, and Tu Tao were charged with aiding and abetting murder. But outrage over George Floyd's death has only spread further and further across the United States.
All right, so sorry, here, just give me just a moment to fix that.
Dr. Bodden, thank you for being back with us. I've known you a long time.
Yes.
You know my background now in martial arts.
Sorry.
I looked at this video again and
Bugging
again.
the
I
crap
saw
out
that
of me.
neck.
I still
saw
didn't
that,
fix it.
That
but,
push into the pavement. I knew immediately
I got a little
that
bit
is
better,
the most
right?
vulnerable part of the human anatomy, unless you care to correct that statement.
Okay, come
you
on.
did the
Where's it at?
autopsy. Tell us what you saw and compare it also.
So as you can see from that story, George Floyd definitely was not killed by Officer Chauvin. So most of these, all of these race riots are spawned by fake news. It appears as though Facebook is the culprit. You can definitely look no farther than Facebook for the source of this misinformation. And so definitely appears as though Mark Zuckerberg is supposed to be the arbiter of the truth. He's doing an absolutely horrible job at being the arbiter of the truth, because when you look at this kind of stuff that they're actually censoring, I've shown on this show twice that I have been censored by Facebook by marking my comments critical of BLM and Democrats as spam. They did not talk about this at their recent congressional hearing because they just said it was marked as hate speech, but they completely left out that they're marking questionable speech as spam. In this next article from the Daily Mail, cops in riot gear clash with protesters outside of a police department in Ferguson, Missouri, and Phoenix, Arizona, with the 6th anniversary of Michael Brown's death. Police in Ferguson, Missouri stormed a crowd of protesters on Sunday night. Today's Monday. I guess it's Tuesday now because we're behind today. So, yeah, that was maybe about 24 hours ago. The protesters had gathered to mark the anniversary of Mike Brown's death. At least 8 people were arrested in protest in Phoenix Sunday. Mike Brown, 18, was shot by police officer Darren Wilson on August 9th, 2014, which seems like a really long time ago. The killing of Mike Brown by Wilson, who is white, set off weeks of riots in the city. Wilson, who has resigned from the force in November 2014, said it was a self-defense. Grand jury chose not to indict him. The DOJ found insufficient evidence. Brown's family sued the city of Ferguson, settling in 2017 for $1.5 million. We have any videos of this one? We do. Actually have videos of this one. Here's cops using pepper spray in the crowd. We have any other videos on this one? So there's Darren Wilson, the cop that shot Mike Brown. I don't remember too much about exactly what happened with this incident. I'm not very well versed on it. Blurry. So, people, if you're going to take a cell phone video, you will notice all of these things are blurry. And the reason why it's blurry is because the autofocus on your camera is absolute complete crap. So if you're going to take a video, you should take the autofocus off and just set it at the farthest focus, and everything will be gravy. But if you don't, you'll ruin a bunch of shots. Anything else from here? All right, let's go look at some videos of the incident. This tweet from Chuck Modi 1, a Ferguson cop points his gun right at me. Why is this necessary? For holding a camera, 6th anniversary of Mike Brown hijacked by police. Police didn't hijack the thing, man. Like, they don't want to go out there. They want to go home. People hijacking it would be the hood Democrats who are engaging in the race riots. What was this one? Black Lives Matter demonstrators preparing for march. And so,
6 years ago, he died. We're fighting for him.
Breonna Taylor, if you're unaware of what happened to Breonna Taylor, she was a EMT who was engaging in some narcotics trafficking with some pretty sketchy dudes that she was sleeping with. And the rumor is that the cops executed a no-knock search warrant just by beating on the door. But the truth is that the cops actually knocked and they announced themselves, and they broke down the door after they gave them plenty of time. And the person the guy who was with Breonna Taylor thought it was some people pretending to be cops to rob them because they're drug dealers. And he shot one warning shot because, I don't know, but then the cops killed both of them, and that's tragedy. But if you want to blame anyone, you can blame drugs being illegal. Let's legalize drugs, and this won't happen. Hood Democrats don't really want to do that because they're make too much money off of selling narcotics. Here's
None of that.
This is what we call hood Democrat.
All we get from y'all is we got 5 seconds to move back, or we will.
These are the people that are claiming that the white man is oppressing them. They're saying that it's discrimination. They won't get hired for the $200,000, $3,000, or $200,000 to $300,000 a year jobs. This next tweet from Chuck Modi 1, nice mix of Ferguson 2014 vets and lots of new SWL blood post George Floyd unite, ending with Asada Mike Brown 6 years, Mike Brown forever. What kind of freedom are they wanting? Here's the cops breaking up the
They're moving in.
rioters.
They're making an arrest. That's an arrest. Hey, they're beating up people. They're fucking beating up people. Police are beating up people. They're fucking beating up people. Look at that gun. You don't need that gun. You don't need that gun. You don't need that gun. What's that gun for? What's that gun for?
To shoot rioters. Seems to be a good thing to have a gun for.
What's your name? 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 Say your name. What's your name?
So it seems as though they're upset that people are utilizing the law in order to keep peace. I don't know. It seems to be okay when they use guns and shoot people, but then whenever the police are using guns to protect the rest of the community from looters and rioters, then that's somehow not okay. But in batshit crazy land, nothing really makes sense. This next article from NPR, Arizona focus group sees Trump's crime attack on Biden as far from reality. And this is a fake news article. It's from a source that is funded by our federal tax dollars. And this is I will admit, not the worst example of usage of our tax dollars to smear President Trump. But what they did was they took 10 people from Arizona, and they don't really tell you anything about the people. They just ask them some questions about Donald Trump, and they assume that all people would think that Donald Trump's message on crime is not resonating with these people. But trust me, when people see videos like this on the internet, they're definitely going to eventually start siding with Donald Trump on the propaganda. So what does he say? What was Trump saying? I don't think they should. This is the problem that I'm not even going to give him breath. Because the problem with this article, I mean, it drones on and on and on and on and on. It's quite obvious just by the length that this person spent on this article. This person does not like Donald Trump, does not want Trump to be elected, and they are using our federal tax dollars, and they're using BS focus groups. It's like, okay, where'd you get these people from your focus group? We just got to trust you that you just grabbed a mixed bag of people, and the media is saturated with stuff like this where people are trying to spin stories to suit their own purposes. And so they will falsify statistics such as this focus group. And they are attempting to not be biased. But the reality is that they set forth with the idea in the first place to test to see whether or not Trump's attack was grounded in reality. And so when you get people in a room to talk about whether or not Trump's ads were grounded in reality, they're going to be expected to give you an answer. They're also going to be susceptible to what the other people are saying. Women in particular are a horrible group to thinkers. They are not as bad as African Americans, because African Americans are like 92% of them vote for Democrats, and most of them live in big cities. And so the women, though, the women will, if you ask them a question and you don't make them conceal how they answered it, they'll usually answer it truthfully. But if there's other people around that they respect, and then you show them how that person answered, then they will typically change their answer to go in line with the person that they liked. And vice versa. If they did not like that person, they will also change to their answer from the opposite. It will also be works with celebrities. If you tell them how Oprah Winfrey voted on a political issue, they will change their vote to be in line with Oprah Winfrey. This is called, and it's we'll talk a little bit more about the origins of fascism and how it came from women's suffrage, which most of the lefties say you're crazy, but no, I actually have proof. Actually, fascism was supposed to be a democracy. Okay, I know this sounds completely batshit crazy, but I actually have proof from the Nazis. It was supposed to be a democracy movement. I know this sounds completely crazy, but it's actually true. So stay tuned. In this next article from the Daily Mail, pro-police protesters brawl with Black Lives Matter demonstrators in Colorado, while thousands march in support of cops in Seattle after the city was wrecked by riots. 3 were arrested for disorderly conduct after violence erupted between cops and supporters and anti-racism protesters in Fort Collins, Colorado on Saturday. Shocking video shows a brawl between about a dozen people in a ditch. The pro-police group claims a veteran in a wheelchair was assaulted, but the counter-protesters say they were attacked without cause. Of course they would. Chaos began when the counter-protesters arrived at the Back the Blue rally outside the local police headquarters. The cop supporters pushed the group back, calling them commie scum, because they are. Antifa started out as a communist movement, and then, contrary to popular knowledge, communists joined with the Nazis because over 50% of Nazis were communist, and Hitler won by a landslide. So, won by a landslide, you know, everybody has to be supporting him, backing him up, and the communists backed up Adolf Hitler, and then they joined sides with Stalin, and Hitler was planning to share Europe with Stalin. This is history that people don't know about. It's 100% true. I've covered it more times than I can count on the show. So let's just see the fight. I don't want to... Oh, hold on. There's got to be cool, more interesting points in here. In a separate incident, counter-protesters were seen being pinned on the ground, pummeled, being led away by police. Thousands of pro-police supporters stood outside Seattle City Hall in Washington State to protest defunding the police department. Seattle City Council is expected to vote on Monday to partially defund the department. Counter-protesters arrived later in the day and had a standoff with pro-police supporters. Alleged Proud Boy members arrived at the demonstration and got into a physical altercation with counter-protesters. Yeah. Here is one of the brawls. Here's the audio as well.
Oh my god!
Yep.
Everybody keep their hands off their weapons. Keep punching each other in the face. Just don't shoot anybody. There you go. There you go. There you go. There you go.
Anything else? We got one good picture. There's here's we got another video. Antifa assaulted someone in a wheelchair. That's what set off the beatdown from the residents. Police were on the scene to arrest the commies.
Bye-bye, commies. Go home, go to school, get a life. They started it. Yeah, really nice of you dirty communists to go after a man in a wheelchair. That's real tough of you, bud.
Yeah. Did he?
Pretty typical,
Did he?
man.
Did he jump? Did he jump? Well, just yeah, I don't know. Well, tell the truth. You got your part out.
You're fucking disrespecting with your fucking communist bullshit.
Yeah, you did.
Where'd you now? Where'd you car? Where'd you now? Where'd you car? Where'd you now? Where's your car at? Car? But none of these people have cars. They came in here. I'm going that way. They can't birthday party down here. Hey, Brian, Adam, we gotta go. We got a kid. We got a birthday party on this side. Oh, you fucking shit out here.
Anything else? Yeah, this one was interesting. He definitely looks like he got his ass kicked. Deserved it. I'm tired of these guys, man. I'm tired of having to live in fear because I'm a conservative journalist. They've been targeting conservative journalists for stabbings and shootings, and these people just look so Nazi. That's the new Nazi. They're the I don't think that neo-Nazis should really be called Nazis, to be quite honest. When you actually look at what Nazis stood for, neo-Nazis aren't really exactly what Nazis are. It seems like they're just like people who were hateful and they just supported it. And they never really looked into it because it kind of says the opposite of what they say. The reason why that ideology was so brutal was because any ideology that such as socialism that forces that people aren't going to do willingly, they're not just going to work all day and then give you most of the work. They're going to want to keep it themselves. And so any system that you have to fight against human nature is probably going to end up with a lot of violence. If you have to force somebody to go along with your plan, chances are you're probably also too going to have to kill that person. In this next article from the New York Post, Portland police officers injured by fireworks during riots. This was published yesterday. Well, technically the day of the show, but I've been having computer problems all day. 2 Portland police officers were injured when rioters shot commercial-grade fireworks at them Sunday night, according to the cops. The officers were struck around 10 p.m. as protesters tried to take over a Portland Police Association office, prompting the cops to declare a riot for the second night in a row. One officer suffered burns to her neck and her face, and her mask was partially melted, while a piece of the firework injured the other officer's leg, Portland Police said. 16 people were arrested on charges ranging from interference with a police officer to disorderly conduct. Earlier in the night, about 200 protesters gathered at a park for the march to the police union building about half a mile away. One declaring through a megaphone, "Tonight will be civilly disobedient, and there's nothing peaceful about the protest," KOIN reported. They then tried to barricade the street and with fencing and dumpsters and lit a dumpster on fire during the march. At one point after the riot was declared, they tossed eggs at the cops. A similar scene played out on Saturday night when the anti-cops demonstrators broke through the PPA office and lit a fire through the building. It seems like I would not call... Okay, so these people, whenever there's actually a crime that happens to them, they always go to the police They never bring up any of this shit that they're talking about. It only comes up when they're wanting to not get arrested for the crimes that they commit. Most of these people are in Democrat-controlled hellholes, such as Portland. I live in Eugene. I went to Portland State University. Portland is a leftist shithole. Eugene is a leftist shithole. It sucks here. People are very hateful and mean. They're not friendly to conservatives like me, even though I used to throw huge raves. I've had over 2,000 people at a rave with 4 stages, and thousands of people know me. That doesn't do me any good. They're brainwashed leftists. I've been trying to get it through their head that George Floyd was a scumbag piece of shit who did home invasion robberies. He sold heroin. He died on 14 lethal doses of fentanyl, which is a lot of fentanyl. And they're still not getting this message. They don't want to comply. They don't want to actually believe it because they're emotionally invested in it. They're definitely emotionally invested in it. It's very late for me. It's 2 a.m. But I'm going to do the show anyways, because we have another show to do tomorrow. This next article from the Daily Mail: a pool noodle covered in nails, explosives. I hate it when they do that. Body armor and a boulder thrown at cop. Portland police release images of the weapons taken off protesters. They arrested 24 people after 72 nights of violence, dude. Like, this is insane. In the whitest city, big city in the country, with one of the lowest police shooting rates in the country, and they're rioting over fake news because they're completely brainwashed. Now I have to deal with them wanting to kill me. Oh yeah, so the pool noodle. Here is the dudes from front image, as you can see right here, because this is a collage show. That's how I'm legally able to do this show under the U.S. copyright laws, because it's like I'm taking a collage of newspaper articles and putting them together to tell a story, such as how the news is fake today. So what was that, a spike strip? So they just take a pool noodle, huh? They've been throwing rocks. Apparently they've been destroying property and then throwing it at the police officers. What was this again? I didn't see what that was. Like, looks like some Scum Tifa armor. Here's a video of Portland police arresting protesters during the unlawful assembly. Anything else? Tunes today. asking for justice for? I'm just... We have the English common law system. Like, the court trials already going on. What, do you want to strip them of qualified immunity? Which is where the cops can get away with killing people because no normal person in their right mind would want to work that job if you could go to jail for just going to work that day and having somebody try to murder you and then you had to defend yourself, or having to think that somebody's about to murder you. You know, sometimes it's a false alarm. They're tragedies. But, you know, there's 230 million people here. Here's a video of the Portland rioters on day 74 of their race riots. So too long, I'm just like, here's the car, breaking up the race rioters, restoring justice and peace in the community, eliminating the terrorist threat, allowing people good sleep. There's rioters throwing eggs and projectiles at police. Moved to clear the Portland Police North Precinct. Some rioters were arrested in the process. Woo! Man, lots of riot videos tonight. Damn.
This is the Portland Police. This is the declared riot. Disperse to the north now. Failure to adhere to citation for crowd control agents.
Is this when they got the rioters back in North Portland tonight? Rioters set up street blockades again, putting explosives at little cops. This next article from Newsweek: Portland protesters tear down protective barrier outside of Portland Police Association, set fire to it. That's what peaceful protesters do, right?
Failure to comply to this order may result in crowd control agents to include tear gas and impact munitions. Leave the area now.
These people went there to go to a riot. Why would they leave? It's what they call a peaceful protest around here. Okay. Same thing. Okay. Well, I'm done with this riot. In this next article from Daily Mail, Donald Trump accuses Portland mayor of endangering lives as he resumes demand the city and state to bring the National Guard after police declare a riot in the city he calls out of control. Trump has for weeks threatened to send the Guard. I hope that he sends the Guard. I personally think that it doesn't matter if it's a federal police officer or if it's a state police officer. They're all here to enforce the law. And it is the fact that we are a nation of laws that makes it so that we don't have to deal with terrorism and robberies and murders anywhere near as much as people without laws do. Even though African Americans do kill about 10,000 people per year, that is still a lot less than the murders that there would be if we did not have these laws. So I would definitely prefer it if we respected the law. I helped start the 2016 Portland anti-Trump protests, and I have shame attached to my conscience from participating in that race riot. At that point in time, I was pretty convinced I was a liberal, and as you can tell, that obviously was not true. I was very depressed too, and as you can tell, I'm obviously not very depressed. Because why the hell would you just be depressed if you're not a liberal? In this next article from the Daily Mail, New York Police Department retreat after 6-hour standoff with angry crowd outside of defiant BLM leader's home as they tried and arrest him for assaulting a cop before he turns himself in after they leave. Is this the guy? Is this the leader? Let's look. Doesn't look like the guy we've been covering this guy. There was one that declared war on the cops. It doesn't look like it's him. That is not the same guy who declared the war on the cops. So what happened? Do we have any videos of this guy? This article's pretty long. It's pretty late. What did he do? Here's him protesting before this crazy standoff thing. And I think at that point in time, everybody thought he was pretty cool. Kind of confused why people wear masks outside. This video's NYPD swarms block to arrest BLM leader, but retreats after protests.
One guy, one protester, one that starts organized protesting. Maminguez. So what? Okay, I'll pick it up on the way back.
Thanks in here. I'm doing a standoff myself. Been on my feet all day. It's 2:22. If you make a donation to the show, we'll make it so that I can hire somebody else, so that I can not have to work for 12 hours to get unpaid.
When they come to me, stand there like a sellout fool, just like you're doing right.
Yep. Police standoff's pretty boring. Unless there's shots fired, right? Or when they're setting up and tearing down, I guess. This next article from Law Officer Training Tactics and Technology. Black Lives Matter protester shot at black officer at his home. This article was from August 10th. For the last few weeks, we've been reporting on an unbelievable case in Wauwatosa, Washington, with Officer Joseph Manshaw. And what was first an attack on Officer Manshaw's reputation now has become a physical attack and assault on him and his family. According to Officer Manshaw himself, BLM extremists, between 50 and 75 of them, surrounded his girlfriend's house, assaulted and physically attacked her. While shooting at Officer Manshaw, they yelled, "Black Lives Matter." Here's the, what is it? Like a press release here. Here's the tweet from Joseph Manshaw last night. And I'm going to insert BLM extremists because that's what they are. They're not just protesters. They're radicalized extremists. Last night, BLM radicalized extremists came to my girlfriend's house while I was there and tried to kill me. I was unarmed and tried to defend my property and the property of my girlfriend. We were both assaulted, punched, and ultimately shot at several times. A shotgun round missed me by inches. Not once did I ever swing back or reciprocate at any of the hate that was being directed at me. Good man. I'm all for peaceful protests, even against me, but this wasn't anything peaceful. They threw toilet paper at her trees, broke her windows, and again shot at both of us as if they were trying to kill me. Wow. There are children that live there, and any the knew that, I think that was a grammatical error. There are children that live there. Any the knew that. And they knew that, I think is what they meant to say. The irony is that this is that they chanted Black Lives Matter the entire time, but had zero regard for any of the black children that live there, or me, a black man, because yeah, they're hypocrites. Any stuff. So you should, I don't know if this guy's on Twitter, follow Officer Manshaw. If he's on Twitter, we support you and not the BLM extremists. Thank you for sticking your neck out, not getting much love from anybody. Hey, there was the video that I was missing earlier. So this next article from Newsweek. Bill Barr accuses protesters of using fascist tactics. The protesters say the same about him. because they think that's why the Antifa are out. They think there's fascists going to come get them. For weeks, the Trump administration had been accused of using fascist tactics in its deployment of federal officers to Portland, Oregon, to quell unrest in the wake of George Floyd's death. I'm unsure what exactly fascist tactics they're referring to. But the ones that actually happened in history are not looking good for Antifa and for the white feminist. Activists, lawmakers, and state leaders have accused the government of using authoritarian force, with Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley telling Newsweek last month that President Donald Trump, the king of memes, has brought fascist tactics to America. I don't think these people know anything about fascism at all. Activists, lawmakers, and state leaders have accused the government of using authoritarian force. Oh, wait, sorry, I just read that. Yet during the interview with Fox News on Sunday, Attorney General William Barr levied the same accusation against protesters, appearing to accuse members of Antifa, a political movement with a name that is literally short for anti-fascist, using fascist tactics themselves. That's why we call them an Antifa Nazi. Speaking with host Mark Levine on you should always go directly to the source literature. Once you figure out how to go to the source literature, life is much more interesting. Let's go look at what did the fascists stand for. So here's the Fascist Manifesto. I personally was in shock when I read this, because I was like expecting, I don't know what I was expecting some like demonic shit, right? Let's read down on the list. Here's the content of the Fascist Manifesto. Politically, it calls for universal suffrage with a lower voting age to 18 years, voting for electoral office eligibility at ages 25 and up, proportional representation on regional basis, voting for women, which was opposed by other European countries at the time, representation of government-level newly created national councils by economic sector. It's kind of like an oligarchy type thing, I think. The abolition of the Italian Senate. At the time, the Senate was the upper house of Parliament. Process elected by the wealthier citizens, but were in reality direct appointments by the king. Been described of as sort of an extended council of the crown. And then they wanted the formation of the Council of Experts for labor, for industry, transportation, of health, communications, selections to be made by professionals, tradesmen, legislative powers. Labor Political Society Manifesto called for a quick enactment of laws and the state sanctions of an 8-hour workday. They wanted a minimum wage. The participation of workers representatives in the functions of industry commissions to show the same confidence in labor unions, to prove technically, morally worthy, as is given to the industry executives or public servants. Reorganization of the railways and transit sector. So public transportation. Revision of the draft law on validity insurance. I'm not sure what that means. Like if you're become an invalid or an invalid? I don't know. If you know, comment on issue 73 on GitHub. And then they want the reduction of the retirement age from 65 to 55. Military affairs, creation of short service national militia with specifically defensive responsibilities. Armaments factories are to be nationalized. Peaceful but competitive foreign policy. And in finance, they want strong progressive tax on capital, seizure of all possessions of the religious congregation, abolition of the bishops, which constitute enormous liability of the nation on the privilege of the poor. I'm not sure if they should have stuck that sentence in there. It seems like a tack on thing. It's just tell me what it is, please. Don't add in any extra words. They want revision of contracts for military provisions, revision of military contracts, and seizures of 85% of the profits therein. So let's also look at the Dang it. I have a video. Oh shoot, I forget what the... Dang it, man. I hate it when this happens. Got it. Yes! So
Hitler goes to vote for himself, the cheers speak.
So women won their voting rights in Germany in 1918, shortly after elected the fascists into power.
Speak louder than words. And with the Führer, millions of Germans go to the poll, and everyone who votes receives a badge inscribed with the words freedom and bread. With only one party to vote for, it's hardly an election as we know them in this country. But all Germany seems to be anxious to show its solidarity behind the dictator and its approval of his policy. And then the votes are counted, and very soon it becomes obvious that even allowing for the special circumstance, it's a striking Nazi victory. And all over Germany the flags go out, and men and women pause in their work, and the sirens screech a toast to the fatherland. So once more the mystery man of European politics gets his own way in his own country.
So you have to ask yourself the question, how on earth is it that Nazism is an equality movement? This sounds batshit crazy. Kale's on one. He's eating too much LSD. He's gone. Ape shit, dude. This is bananas. No, actually, the Nazism was supposed to be a more evolved form of communism. It was a competing ideology with communism. It was the antithesis of capitalism. It was not... they were trying to destroy capitalism so that they could... Because people won't comply with what they wanted to do. They did it not only in Nazi Germany, but also in the USSR. And it was the socialist punk scum from the city who went through the country and terrorized the country. And the countrysides were capitalist, and then the socialist punk scum in the city were took over. They had majority support. They were backed up by the women. And people say that they were opposed to liberalism, but there's like conflicting definitions and notions of what liberalism is. It's evolved recently. Now we have two different kinds of liberalism. There's American conservatism, and then there's liberalism. American conservatism contains classical liberalism. When you are a conservative in the United States, you are attempting to preserve or conserve classical liberalism. In other countries, conservatism is going to be different. So they're not going to be the good guys everywhere. Sometimes you need liberals, sometimes you need conservatives, but you definitely don't want to have a world where it's all one or the other, because California is a shithole. It is a horrible place to be. It is a scam. And in Oregon, we do not want the filthy, stinking Californians moving up here, jumping the border and taking our jobs. So we want to build the wall between California and Oregon. This is my political platform for when I run for office here in Oregon. So also, too, the East Coast does not want the West Coast to move over to the West Coast, and the West Coast does not want the East Coast moving over and taking over here. Canada does not want Washington coming over. Washington does not want Canada coming over and taking over. None of them want that. But as we could see, obviously, Adolf Hitler had popular support. Germans never owned slaves. They were not white supremacists. So there's this misconception that Hitler was a white supremacist. It's not actually true. He was an ethno-nationalist. He was trying to convert Africans and everyone in the world to Nazism. And Nazism was supposed to be an alternative where you competed. So instead of having racism, because Germans weren't racist, Berlin was one of the most racially tolerant places in the world at the time of this video. And they modeled their laws after Democrat Jim Crow laws in order to scare off the Africans to keep them out of the war. They thought the Democrats were way too racist. But they just wanted to prevent, if they lost, they didn't want Africa to come and take the motherland, because that would be the ultimate loss. This is why Adolf Hitler chose to invade Russia, which seemed to be a suicide. By all accounts, it was a suicidal move for Adolf Hitler to invade Russia, because he was on the side of Stalin at that point in time. And so my own personal theory that I am pushing is that Hitler actually, well, first he ran out of food and gas, and then he turned on Stalin. So he knew he had to either attack Stalin or he had to attack some other place with oil, like Africa. I'm not sure exactly where the oil deposits were, but they were very limited in their knowledge of where. But the Nazis were trying to create a socialist utopia in Europe with this structure where they had competition and then they had a dictator. So it was supposed to be a more pure form of democracy, which sounds fucking insane, but everything about Nazism just gets more and more insane, you know? So it's not, given by the scale of the insanity of Nazism, this is actually relatively low on the insanity scale here. We know that they did not like Jewish people. Jewish people at that point in time were rabid white supremacists. It is true. The Jews at that time advocated for genocide against people. Before the Russian Jews took control of the USSR, Stalin was a Bolshevik, and then they were they rose up to the top of their military, and then they committed the Holodomor famine genocide in the Ukraine in like 30 through 34, somewhere around there. We've covered it a number of times on the show. That killed upwards to 12 million Ukrainians. This was why the Nazis hated the Jews so bad, because they killed the Ukrainians. It wasn't just because they hated Jews. That was absolutely false information. That was never true. They blamed the Russian Jews for controlling They thought the Jews controlled the world because of the Rothschilds, and then the Russian Jews that took control. But then once Stalin knew that these people killed the Ukrainians, he knew they were dangerous, and so he then later killed those people. So he was with those people, and then he turned on them, and this is the way Stalin worked. He would kill everybody who would... This is why authoritarian power structures are bad, because it's just like you have to kill people in order to maintain them. And if you have to do that, then it is a very evil system. So Nazism was supposed to replace that. They were going to make the Jews, take the Jews out of power. They were the 1%. So they were poor people trying to make it equal by taking out the Jews, jacking them, taking their money, which is a pretty atrocious thing to do. But they hated them. And this is the other thing that's identical to the BLM Antifa Nazis, is that they hate... BLM Antifa Nazis hate Donald Trump. They hate Donald Trump supporters, and they hate police. They advocate for violence, hostility, and hatred, aggression towards them. And this causes them to be a hate group. So this closely mirrors Nazi Germany, because first off, the white feminists are out there with the BLM Antifa Nazis. They are part of the BLM Antifa Nazis. And then fascists were part of the women's suffrage movement. Then you have, they were both trying to take out the 1% to make the people who were poor, bring them, they hated the bourgeoisie at that point in time because they blamed them for all of their problems, which is the root of anti-Semitism. So in the end, they thought this was going to be more fair. That's why they weren't feminist, because they thought the traditional family structure was stronger, and so it was going to be more fair and more equal if you weren't feminist. And so initially it sounds like they're not liberals, but then when you start to examine the details of them and you compare them to the conservative power structure, which is what our definition is. We have liberal versus conservative now, and they're both a form of liberalism, where one is it includes classical liberalism, and then the liberals on the left just have beelined it out to batshit crazy land. And so I do believe that China has been playing around in here. So what's the next video that we have here? We saw the wiki. We showed you the BLM Antifa Nazis are indeed fascist. So time to move on. I think that's it with this segment. I have a new system now where I can chop up the things into clips very easy. Little 10 or 15 minute clips, so you should be seeing those soon. I'm getting better. In this next article from the New York Post, Baltimore explosion kills at least one and traps several in rubble. A massive gas explosion tore through a residential neighborhood in Baltimore, killing one woman and leaving several others seriously injured, according to authorities and news reports. Whoa, what was that? Woo! Man, that was a truck. Wow. Not too much else from there. Gas explosion. What's next? What's going on here? Oops. This work. All right. This will work. Yeah, got it. In this next article from the Times of Israel, Trump abruptly pulled from press briefing after shooting outside of the White House. Secret Service agents interrupted a coronavirus briefing, rushed President Trump out of the room. Trump returned, saying law enforcement shot apparently armed suspect. Everything's under control. Do we have the video? Here is the video.
Well, we will just remind you what has just happened. Do I seem rattled, was the question he put. So he was pulled out of this news conference because there was a shooting on the outside of the White House premises. They just wanted me to step aside, but it was just one person. That person now being taken to hospital. The president understands that they were armed. They were shot by Secret Service or law enforcement people. And there are some terrific looking people ready to go, he said, if something was necessary, talking about the security outside the White House. So let's just remind ourselves of what happened a little earlier.
Going to be, I mean, the way they're going, it looks like they're just about going to be topping records hopefully soon. Excuse me?
Did they tell him there was a shooting? He handled that pretty calmly. I thought he handled that pretty good. This next article from the New York Post, Hong Kong pro-democracy activist Agnes Chow arrested. Prominent pro-democracy activist Agnes Chow was arrested in Hong Kong in her home Monday under China's new national security law under reports. And if you're not familiar with this national security law, it's extraterritorial. If you encourage people to overthrow the dictator Winnie the Pooh. If you're unfamiliar with this, Xi Jinping, the dictator of China, he looks like Winnie the Pooh. If you do a side-by-side comparison, they actually look the same. But he really doesn't like it if you call him Winnie the Pooh. So we like to tease him as much as we can. And you should encourage all your friends to encourage the people of Hong Kong to overthrow the dictator Winnie the Pooh and to bring democracy to Hong Kong and to not be a part of the Chinese Nazi government anymore. But if you say these things, then you are now no longer, you are now can be a wanted criminal in China if you say this in America. So we need to get everybody to say this, because if every single person in America starts saying this, then, you know, what are they going to do, right? Reading on the article, a masked Chow was seen in a video being arrested and whisked off in a vehicle as authorities broadened their enforcement of the law earlier, detaining... Oops. Sorry. Wrong button. After detaining 9 people, including tycoon Jimmy Lau, which I thought I was going to read this article. I thought this was going to be the Lau article first. This was the one. Let's go over to the... This is the bigger article bust. This next article from the New York Post, Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lau arrested under new Chinese national security law. Hong Kong police arrested media tycoon Jimmy Lau and raided the publisher's headquarters Monday in the highest profile use yet of the new national security law, Beijing imposed on the city after protests last year. Jimmy Lau is being arrested for collusion with foreign powers at this time, Mark Simon wrote on Twitter. Hong Kong police said people have been between 39 and 72 years old have been arrested on suspicion of violating the national security law. But sentiment did not reveal the names of those arrested. Sorry, the statement did not reveal the names. Lau, L-A-I, Lai, can't pronounce that. Apologies. Murdering your name, Lau. 71 owns a popular tabloid, Apple Daily, and is an outspoken pro-democracy figure in Hong Kong who would regularly criticize its Chinese authoritarian rule. I would totally also, too, be regularly criticizing China, the Chinese Nazi Party. They are indeed a Nazi National Socialist structure because of their allowance of private property ownership. It's impossible to have hundreds of millions of Chinese, impoverished Chinese out in the country the way they do, and have ultra-rich Asians, and to have a system where you're competing with fierce competition to go up to the top, and have millions of Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps, as well as a dictator who looks just like Winnie the Pooh, as well trying to be the world's number one superpower and having a nightmarish surveillance state. All of the above make you a national socialist structure. There's no other definition of national socialist structure other than you have a steep hierarchy where you're trying to compete to go up to the top, where you got incredibly impoverished people down at the bottom. You've killed millions of people. You got them in concentration camps. You got people under surveillance 24/7. This isn't this isn't community control. Communism is community control. Theoretically, sounds great. Doesn't go with human nature. This is the problem with communism. This is why it doesn't work. It's because you factor in human nature, and then all of a sudden, stuff just doesn't work. So who else? They arrested his two sons, two other people. This is a very scary law. So the only way that we can really fight it is by regularly trash talking Xi Jinping, because Chinese people actually do go on American internet a lot via VPN. So they do actually get the messages. So if we're all sitting around talking shit about Winnie the Pooh, then there's not really much that they can do. If everyone is encouraging Hong Kong to overthrow the dictator Winnie the Pooh, then they can't really do anything. So it is one way to fight back. It is one way that I am fighting back. I would applaud you to join me. This one is one of the scariest. China is the scariest thing going on in the world right now. Oops, missed this one. This next article from Newsweek, Trump's approval rating is getting better as election day draws closer, according to some polls. I don't think most polls are legit. 538 is legit. 538 is one of the more trustworthy sources when it comes to politics. This one says President Trump's approval ratings slowly increasing a little less than 3 months ago until Election Day, despite the continued spread of COVID and steep unemployment around the country. According to 538's approval rating tracker, 41.4% of U.S. adults backed the president's performance in the Oval Office on average, while 54% disapproved. It sounds like the same thing. This is the thing about these fake news outlets like Fake News Week. They put out all these free articles. You know, it takes a long time to write stuff like this. And they have to, it's a low, the chance they're going to get money from you is pretty low. So they have to put out a lot of the articles in order to make money. When you do this, you have a flood of fake news. So they're always talking about polls because when you really look at the statistical sample size, there's no way that you can get a good sample on it. It's impossible, physically impossible. They usually use about 1,000 people on the polls, and there's 3,000 counties in the U.S., so that's like one person out of every 3 counties. I don't know about you, but that is wildly inaccurate. There's no way. A coin toss is going to be more accurate than that at that point in time. But Fake News Week will sit here and lie to you all the time about the polls. And they say there's a 4 to 5% chance of error. Really what they're saying is we're getting paid by political parties to do these polls, and we have them rigged. And when we do the polls this way, then there's a 3 to 5% chance of error that we're not going to be able, or that our rigging of the election will be the exact value that we think it is. This is how slimy they are. But looks good for Trump, though, so we're going to put it on Real Simple News. This duplicate article. This next article from Taiwan News. TikTok owners show true colors with communist flag. Photo shows CCP members, ByteDance employees, holding communist flag at China's headquarters. Here you go. Yep. That's not the China flag. That's the USSR flag, right? I haven't looked at the flag in a long time, but the China flag, I remember the China flag has stars in it. That one is the USSR one. Yeah. You see, it's not really possible to have communism with the system set up where you got ByteDance. These people are fabulously rich from TikTok. They're extracting. They won't allow American social networks to come to China, but then they want to put TikTok here for a spy device. No. Can't trust them at all, man. This next article from BBC News. Trump WeChat ban, an unwelcome signal for Chinese community. So the decision last week by U.S. President Donald Trump to order American firms to stop doing business with WeChat has sent shockwaves rippling out. WeChat has become the tool for Chinese-speaking people no matter where you are around the world. So obviously, you could see the BBC just doesn't want like anything that Trump does. So we're not allowed to bring our social networks to China. But then TikTok expects to be able to sell in our country when they're using the TikTok as a massive spy tool to commit all kinds of espionage, one of them being industrial espionage. On top of that, they can also monitor people who work for defense contractors who use that device, and then they can get information on defense contractors that they are absolutely not supposed to have. I'm not going to go too far into this, but the point of this, because this is just an opinion, this isn't news. They call it news. Are they actually calling it news? It just says China. Does it say opinion? So, what they should be telling you is you're in America now. You're supposed to be part of our social network. You're supposed to integrate into our culture. You're not supposed to be bringing the Chinese Nazi Party propaganda to our country. You're supposed to leave that with the Chinese Nazi Party so that they can go oppress the Uyghur Muslims and the hundreds of millions of impoverished Chinese out in the countryside that they use for baby factories. Just let them oppress themselves, man. But WeChat is the spitting definition of antitrust in our country. WeChat would absolutely not be allowed in the United States. It would have been broken up. It does way too much. It's Facebook on steroids with spy tools built in to monitor everything that you do. But they won't tell you anything about that. All they're going to do is just sit here and then talk about how horrible it is for the Chinese people. You're persecuting the minorities. The wham man can't take it. They beta males. They can't take it when an alpha male picks on them. They're going to cry. They're going to demand the state pay for their wham burger and cries. I personally think they need to buy their own wine. Me personally, if I owned a social media network, which I do, am making one, but this is always perpetual with me. I did actually make it from scratch in C++. So if I was actually able to sell, I do own a company that does this, so I do actually have a conflict of interest that I'm disclosing to you. I would totally want to just gut TikTok. It's just like, F TikTok, man. Take that shit. I make viral. My thing makes viral videos. Why wouldn't I want to take out this? So me personally, I would definitely want to take out TikTok. So because they're a competitor. So given by the fact that we can't go sell in China, if I go to China, I'm going to go to jail for criticizing Winnie the Pooh, because Winnie the Pooh is such a small man that he can't take it when you call him Winnie the Pooh. He can't take it when you endorse democracy because they're hella beta and they can't fight democracy without suppressing it. It's because they're weak. And because they're sold on some brainwashed bullshit system that has just proven to be a complete failure and has killed hundreds of millions of people in the history of the world, why the fuck would any scumbag want to even do that? Like, it takes a special kind of scumbag to take up the National Socialist banner and actually throw Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps. It takes pretty small person, pretty weak-minded person, pretty cowardly, pathetic person to throw somebody in jail for advocating for bringing democracy. I mean, that's pretty chump, man. Seriously chump, man. So, sorry about that. Sorry. It can be confusing. There's two monitors, one with OBS on it. And I can chop up the clips now. In this next article from the Daily Mail, activists feted by Vogue at heart of a parliament-style Black Power protest group, while its leader, who is accused of anti-Semitism, boasts of 100 martial arts trained members who could replace the police. Imaran Ayton was ubiquitous during London protests after George Floyd's death. Last week, she was seen on parade with several Forever Family Group. FFF leader Kamari McKenzie has rather unsettling ideas about the police. So that's this chick right here. She's looking pretty cray. See, these people are what you call posers. Like, they're there just to pose to take a picture. That's why we call them posers. I am not a poser because I am getting Rotten Tomatoes thrown at me. But these people here are posing to attempt because they think it's a equality movement and is going to make them popular. This is their chance to get their pictures for Facebook so they can come up in the social hierarchy of social justice warriors. She wants to be Xena, social justice warrior princess, so she can say, beta males attack! So this is what you call a publicity stunt. You got a bunch of people all dressed up. They don't have problems with police brutality there. They're out protesting over laws in the United States. They don't live here. They don't pay taxes here. They probably don't know anybody here. They don't have any business here. Probably never going to visit here. We don't particularly want them involved in our politics here. They don't know the full story. They probably still think that the police killed George Floyd and that Breonna Taylor was a no-knock raid. And this is the problem is that it starts out with, like, you know, in America, it starts out as kind of fucked up and cray. And then by the time it gets to Europe, it goes completely batshit crazy. Okay, so I live in Eugene, Oregon, and we have this thing called the Oregon Country Fair here. And so we have hippies that are, their look is the look that people became the popular look of a hippie. We also developed a good number of the popular looks at Burning Man because we have a lot of weird hippies here. And so here, it's like a cultural thing, the hippies, and it kind of makes sense. And like being in Eugene, I grew up here, and so I'm just used to people being like that. But whenever the Europeans start to copy us, they turn into total fucking lunatics, man. These people are insane in Europe. What the hell? Like, I read a story on Real Simple News with Coffee yesterday that they have made it a hate crime in the UK now to disrespect vegans or like discriminate based upon people being vegan. So if I take a steak, if I go to the United Kingdom, and if I take a steak, I'm like, hey, you want a steak? Yeah, look at the meat. I'm going to go to jail for a hate crime. I'm not even kidding, dude. These people in Europe are fucking fruitcakes, dude. Like, it's... Like, what the hell are these people doing protesting? They don't have police brutality there because they don't have a war on drugs, and they don't have African Americans murdering almost 10,000 people per year. That would be batshit crazy there. if the African Americans were murdering as many people in Europe as they do in America, these people would never, ever in a million years be out protesting for African Americans. They would never do this. They would say, I am not with those people. I am an African European. I'm not with them. Because that's what the African immigrants around here say. The African immigrants in the United States are the highest paid group of immigrants in the entire country. So, when you try to compare an African immigrant to a gangbanger in Atlanta, like the serial killer who attempted to kill me, which I've already told the story enough times, I'm not going to tell it again tonight, then so this is why you shouldn't go protesting to change laws in another country, because as it turns out, you don't actually know the full story, and it might just end up to where you're on YouTube with some guy in the other country calling you bananas, batshit crazy, calling you a poser, and that you're only there to get a photo op so that you can come up on Facebook with your group of social justice warriors so that you can do the Xena social justice warrior princess attack. It's a picture. It's a photo op with these people. And so Vogue has just gone cray. Here is the batshit craziness here. In this next article from Fox News, Dan Crenshaw blasts Teen Vogue op-ed advocating for the end of property rights. Writer Candace Mullet's article reads like Marxist propaganda, the Texas congressman says. Just wondering if anyone else sees issues with our next generation reading Marxist propaganda in popular teen magazines. Crenshaw, who represents the Houston area 2nd Congressional District of Texas, wrote on Twitter. So what did they say? It says Communist Mattis Mullet has recently, they didn't put the bottom line up front. Let's go to the bottom line. Please do not be a sloppy journalist and put the bottom line up top, and then I'll continue reading because your journalism is good. So the quote, what they said in the article is, quote, while we're working to abolish the police, we must also work to dismantle what police were put here to protect, property. What is more evident of the legacy of settler colonialism is the violence that the idea of ownership in land, she wrote. So this is hardcore Marxism. This is as communist as it gets. And they're putting this stuff in a magazine for teenagers. A editor is curating it, and they're doing the same garbage think that fake Newsweek is doing. Fake Newsweek, if you go to their website, you'll see they have opinions, and they're saying they're being non-biased. So we're going to put different opinions on, and so they placate to some totally insane things in the name of trying to be non-biased, and they spew out fake news like a fire hydrant. So the Vogue magazine here is obviously trying to use the same tactic that causes the fake news to spew out like a fire hydrant, where you are attempting to placate to both sides. You're saying, oh, I'm going to be fair. I'm going to show both sides of the issue. No, this never works out right. You live in a world where you will get fired for something you said on Twitter. This means that people aren't going to say what they think at work. This means everybody's biased. Workplaces are by definition authoritarian. If you want to know about what it is like to be in an authoritarian dictatorship, you should get a job. I implore you, all of you BLM Antifa Nazis, you should actually at some point in time attempt to get a job so you know what it's like to actually earn something. If you do actually have a job, you should attempt to start a business so that you know what it's like to have these crazy leftists disrespect absolutely all of your work because they think you have white privilege. They want to attack you and take it from you, screw your entire life work up because of your skin color and your gender. And they don't understand what they're doing. They're like, I'm just trying to protect minorities because they think the minorities are incapable of protecting themselves. But the reality of the situation is they think that because they think the minorities are inferior and they need a savior, a white savior to come and save them, to give them money from Uncle Sam. They're not getting the handouts that the white males are getting, so they want to get their fair share of the handouts. And so they're going to do it by attacking the white guys to get them, kick them out of the workplace. Because once they're out of the workplace, they won't have that pesky GPA requirement anymore. So this one's pretty scary, man. Not only that, yesterday, last Real Simple News was on August 3rd or 4th or something. I covered that Hollywood has been censoring movies in order to be able to sell their movies in China. They're making billions of dollars per year selling movies in China. And that they're getting this money because they're not criticizing the Chinese government. They're not advocating for democracy. They're advocating for anti-racism, for feminism, for leftist issues that appease the Chinese, the dictatorship. Winnie the Pooh is very happy when we get these regurgitated movies where you switched what was a good movie with a white character into now a minority or a woman, and you totally ruined the plot line. And these movies are bombing hard in America. They suck. Everything about them sucks. They made very little money off of them. But they don't need to make money in America. They've got old Uncle Jinping, a.k.a. Zinny the Pooh. He can make even a bad anti-racist pro-Beijing movie do good in China. So they don't need you. So you are now, at this point in time, subsidizing cultural Marxism that is coming to a theater near you to deprive you of your cultural identity, your heritage, your faith. And they are doing all of this with the help of the university system. And a lot of it is coming from the tech community. I'm an engineer, and I know all about the stinky poo-poo from all of these hackers and these programmers. And the engineers are a lot more conservative than the engineers are definitely conservative. The programmers are radicalized. I love programming. I usually program all day. but I have been doing this show almost all day recently. But I don't like having to say that these programmers have turned into angry leftist jerks. But the fact is that they have. The moment you call them an angry leftist jerk, they will indeed turn into an angry leftist jerk. I am not joking. You can actually test this out. You can go up to one of these angry leftist jerks and tell them that feminists suck and that they are very unattractive and that women are much happier when they are mothers and that leftists are assholes and they're scum, and they will hate you. They'll hate you for the rest of your life. Now, if a leftist came up to me and said, Republicans are scum, I would say, no, man, you've been taken advantage by the fake media. You got wrong. You were told wrong. That stuff's just not, it's not true. That's what I would say. I would say, I forgive you for all of the insults, because I've heard plenty of insults about me, and generally they're really actually not really, they don't really, much of them don't have merit. And what was I saying? People will insult you, and after a little while, it becomes funny, actually. Because you know which are the things you see. This is why you know that these people are brainwashed, because you can get a predictable response. So when you put in a certain stimuli, such as feminists are really unattractive, I would totally never ever date one. I think that they are typically like have too much body weight. The hair under their armpits just nasty, and sometimes their pussy smells like tuna. Woo, damn! Woo, you want to see some firecrackers? Like, what did you say? Sorry, it's late. People up here. It's like that. It's that one meme with that brunette chick with the short hair that's like, I can't remember, I'm sorry. There's been an explosion in cultural Marxism. It's coming. Now, when I first started delving into the research of this cultural Marxism, when I had discovered the Wikipedia hacking, or the tampering on Wikipedia from hostile agents, when I was banned from Wikipedia for calling out boogeyman propaganda, this Marxist thing didn't really sink in for like maybe 2 or 3 months exactly what they were doing, till I started to learn all of the bits of the World War II and communist China history. Then all of a sudden it starts to really make sense what they're doing. China is actually literally using AI algorithms to attempt to remove the white man from power. They are trying to get us to not enforce our immigration laws. And that's because if Spanish-speaking people take over, then their enemy is gone. White people are 72% of America. That's the enemy. So they are targeting mainly the white males and the white feminists. Women control 85% of consumer spending, so most ads are targeted towards them. They use Chinese Nazi Party-controlled companies to target you with advertising through Facebook. Women control 85% of consumer spending, so they are the primary targets of the advertising. And they have been using the attempting to destroy our culture through encouraging cultural Marxism through their propaganda networks. And when this is what they did in the cultural de-evolution was when the Chinese Communist Party, back before they were Nazi Party, they destroyed the cultural institutes of China, like the Buddhist monasteries, Tibetan monasteries, Taoist monasteries. They took out all that stuff, saying it was like, I don't know exactly what they were saying, why they took it out, but it was probably lunatic, probably using racism stuff. They use stuff that, like, whatever, they want to make it seem like it's not fair to you. That's how they get you to go and murder other people, is by thinking that they took from you. And so now you have to put up with shitty movies. Now you can't let your kids read Vogue magazine anymore. That was another thing of our culture that is gone. So most of our culture has been getting slowly eradicated by Hollywood. And oh yeah, this was what I was actually trying to say before, and then I forgot what I was saying. I knew when I first started studying Wikipedia that Hollywood was in it because I was doing an AI model of the socialist overthrow of China and utilizing a strategy where they pivoted intentionally to create a division where Hitler fought Stalin because if he lost, then they could invade China. And so from doing this and reverse analyzing their business model with an A-star algorithm, I was able to pinpoint that Hollywood was involved with this through the article that I was banned on from Wikipedia for calling out boogeyman propaganda, which was the Great Replacement article, which you'll notice that they don't tell you. I'll tell you all kinds of stuff about immigration data. I know a lot about it. You won't find any of it on Wikipedia. And the reason why is because if you have the information that's actually in there, you'll see that actually immigrants are actually replacing us because our birth rate is less than the replacement rate. But the population is growing. And the reason for this is because large corporations want women to give off, not have a baby, so they could slave for some millionaire because they're losers and they can't get girlfriends. So they want the girls to hang out with them at work. You have to understand these people are actually just pathetic with women in order to understand how they're working with the women. They're at work all the time. This is why they're the upper class and they want to be around women. So this is why they believe the way they do, is because first, when the white women get more money, they control 85% of consumer spending, so the corporations get more customers to buy more stuff. Also, it allows them to be liked more. It allows women to then like them more, which then increases their chance of getting laid. And that's really, in the end, what they're after. What was the other? I don't know exactly what that had to do with it. Marxism? I forget my point. I'm going to move on. In this next article from the Daily Mail, officials storm Miss Nevada beauty pageant for violating COVID-19 social distancing rules. Same Las Vegas hotel fined for hosting evangelicals Trump's days earlier. The city of Las Vegas business licensing shut down the event on Sunday evening. Crowds at Miss Nevada beauty pageant at Ahern Hotel were asked to leave. Currently in Nevada, public gatherings are limited to 50 people. One attendee estimated there was about 200 guests at the pageant. This comes after the same hotel was fined for hosting evangelicals for Trump's event. Seems a little bit crazy to me. I personally think that you should vote with your penis and your vagina. I personally think I am voting for these women. I think that they should totally be able to show how beautiful they are. And if you are at such an age to where coronavirus is a danger for you, because if you're under the age of 45, your chance of dying from coronavirus is 38 times lower, which is much less deadly than the flu for a young person. So if you're young, you don't care about COVID. It's not going to affect you. Once you've had COVID, the only reason why it would affect you is because you haven't had COVID before. And once you get COVID, then you're going to be, if you get it like 4 or 5 times, you're probably going to be immune from COVID. We don't know because it's a wild card, but it's looking like SARS-CoV-2 is going to be like the other coronaviruses, which are the common cold. You've heard of that one, right? Catching a cold? Yeah, the coronavirus. Yeah. SARS-CoV-2. That's a coronavirus. So not all coronaviruses are... Here's the official shutting down the pageant.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? Next to me is Captain Owen from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and from the city of Las Vegas is... I'm sorry, Monica Perez, and your name, young lady? License Officer Tucker. They are shutting this event down. They are trying to say that we are in violation, that we're only allowed to have 50 people. We disagree with that. If you are not with Miss Nevada, you cannot be here. You have to exit the area.
Damn you, sis, relax!
Strip clubs?
I don't know what that comment means. You know.
Strip club?
You're filming this? Yeah. Okay, good. It's for like posterity.
Okay.
So at this time, I need you to talk to your people and explain to them that they're going to unfortunately have...
See, the reason why I think it's completely illegal to have these shutdowns, it's unconstitutional, is because they're preventing you from getting SARS-CoV-2 when, if you're a young person, if you're an old person and you get SARS-CoV-2, you get SARS. If you're a young person, chances are nothing's going to happen to you. So, in order to get immune to it, you do actually have to get the virus. You can't wait for a vaccine because it's going to mutate, and that vaccine won't. You will probably already had that one by that point in time, so that won't do you any good to have a vaccine to the one that you've already had and you have an immunity to. So this is completely illegal to do this because you have to show, if you're going to lock people down, you really do have an evidence barrier to go over when you're depriving people of their constitutional rights. It's called a clear and convincing evidence rule. And I know that they have some rules that they can take over in emergency situations, but they can't declare anything in an emergency situation. That's part of our law is, yes, they do have the ability to declare martial law. They do have wide, broad scope in what they can do. But the fact remains that they cannot do it arbitrarily and capriciously. These specific words, arbitrary and capricious, have very specific meanings in law. What it means is arbitrary just means that you kind of just picked it out. It didn't really actually, like if you drew straws, that would be arbitrary. And then capricious would mean that you did it because you had malicious, you wanted to harm someone. So someone crossed you. So let's say you're a judge and then you didn't like the way that the defendant acted. And so you then shut that person down unlawfully. Like, let's say they denied them some rights. They did that because they were being capricious to that person. They didn't like that person. So then they abused their authority against that person by doing something they weren't allowed to do. This is what they're doing with these COVID lockdowns. They're doing something completely arbitrary because they're like, oh, well, we're going to try to like have a mass lockdown. Never done before. They don't have precedents for that. They say, oh, well, in 1918, they had a flu pandemic and they did all these things. They're like, really? 1918? You mean back at that point in time where they were still sterilizing American Indians and people with disabilities? Ah, right. Yeah. Back when they used to lynch black people from trees. Right. Those are the people that we're supposed to actually listen to for what we're supposed to do in a modern day and age when we have 320 million people. Obviously, that doesn't fly. We're like attempting to do a mass lockdown based off of some really bad scientific research. The reason why they want to do the lockdown is to protect one class of people, but they're doing it at the expense of the young people. The suicide, there's like almost 50,000 suicides per year in the U.S. Then the suicide rate went up 358% or 356% in March of 2020. So if that keeps going, that's about 200,000 suicides this year. Could be. Then you also have the number of people who had their procedures delayed, their medical procedures. And we covered the show on Real Simple News with Coffee on August 7th, where there was an article in there, and I think it was from the Daily Mail, but they said a study in the UK said that for every three lives that were saved from COVID, 2 more died from lack of care from the shutdown. These statistics are going across the board. They're going with the suicide statistics going up. We have the murder statistics going up. We have the, I don't know about the drug overdose statistics. I haven't looked at those. Alcohol use is up. So with all of the other things that are factored into it, then you factor in the starvation from all the people in third world countries who are going to be starving to death from the lockdowns and from the loss in economic productivity. And then you start to see that this becomes completely arbitrary. You're like, well, yeah, I mean, we thought we're doing this for scientific reasons, but it's kind of arbitrary when you don't have any sort of prior data to go on. Our only prior data was 1918 when they used to lynch black people in the public square. This isn't going to be a good source of data for us. Let me look up capricious. I just want to make sure that I said the right definition. I did say the wrong definition. Capricious is whimsical. It's not malicious. I had said the wrong word. Sometimes it takes a moment for me to catch up on such shit like that. So, arising from impulse, unpredictable, characterized by caprice, apt to change opinions subtly, deviate from one's purpose, unsteady, changeable. That's exactly what these COVID lockdowns are. They are capricious. That's exactly what they are. They're capricious because they deviate from one purpose. So we started with what purpose? We started with the purpose of flattening the curve. And then after we started, the the flatten the curve. It then turned into, now we have to find a cure. Now we have to wear a mask and still socially isolate, so you can't have a baby anymore. So there's like, I want to say there's 4 million births in the U.S. each year. Look that up. It's in that range. But there are expected to be, some people are saying a 300,000 estimate. By my eyeball of it, that sounds like way off. From my looks of the Gaussian curve, it does not look like that. That is the truth. But I have not ran actually the numbers. A lot of times the numbers will add up to a freakish amount more than you thought. But it doesn't look like that to me. So it's capricious because we started from the point of we were going to flatten the curve, and then now the point. Hold on. What are they trying? So the purpose of flattening the curve was because they thought we didn't have ventilators, and that we were going to overwhelm the ICU. But it turns out that this was bullshit the entire time. We never overwhelmed the ICUs. So now we've deviated from the original purpose. Now what is the purpose of it? Now they're trying to say that they're trying to prevent us from getting COVID. That's not the original purpose. Originally, they had predicted 50% of people were going to get COVID. So we just have to, there's nothing that we can do to stop it. And the reason why we're at risk of getting SARS is because it's a new virus. That's why it was the pandemic. And our bodies aren't used to fighting it, so you might get SARS. So now they're trying to say, now we want to just prevent you from getting SARS. So now we can. But that's the problem with that. That's capricious. Because it's, what does fickle mean? It's changeable, unsteady, changeable. Fickle. Does it change? So the regulations are not the same. The regulations are fickle. So in Oregon, they're forcing us to wear masks in the stores. But we never had a COVID outbreak here. If you look at the number of COVID deaths, they're at flu level in Oregon. We never had it was a pandemic because it had multiple continents on it. That's the definition of pandemic. But we didn't really have an epidemic here. Yeah, that's what they call it. Epidemic is just where you have a disease floating around, and then a pandemic is where the disease is going around multiple continents. What else is there? Fickle, subject to change, irregularity. So it's irregular because, why? I don't know. Getting tired. There's one solution to it here. Next article from the Daily Mail. Iodine mouthwash could protect against COVID-19 and reduce viral load against infected patients because it has significant virus-killing ability when used with sister viruses SARS and MERS, scientists claim. Experts tested strong mouthwash for COVID on 4 COVID-19 patients and saw results had been 4. I mean, don't you think 4 is just a little bit too soon to be putting this on the news? I don't know about you, man. I don't trust those people. I don't. I've seen so much fake news and so many bad studies, so many quack docs. I'm never going to believe anything that somebody doesn't say without evidence. This next article from the New York Post says Sioux Nation will block bikers ahead of the Sturgis rally, citing coronavirus concerns. a convoy consisting of thousands of bikers is headed for a South Dakota rally, but will not be allowed to cross the Cheyenne River Sioux checkpoints on their way to the event, according to American Indian. I am a native to America. I can't go back to Europe. I'm not a citizen there. Nobody is a native to America because humans came from Africa. And because humans came from Africa, they were native to everywhere where they had a land bridge to where they were physically connected. But the ice bridge there, that was something that was like temporary. So this allowed them to pass because they didn't have wheels back then. And so the American Indians walked across on a land bridge, but that was temporary. We sailed across on a boat. They died because of smallpox. We invented the cure for smallpox. If it wasn't smallpox, it would have been some other disease that killed them. If it wasn't the white man, it would have been the Chinese. So, I mean, we could play the game of who has more of a right to be here, but there's 72% of America is white, and you do the math on that, vastly outnumbered. Not really a fight that's really worth fighting, if you ask me. I would prefer to be your friend. The spokesman said on Saturday that the band of travelers would be stopped on their way to the Surges motorcycle rally in the name of preventing COVID from spreading any further. Wait, what are they flipping out about? Smallpox still? 7 tribes that make up the Sioux Nation are now in a fight with federal and state officials who deem such checkpoints completely illegal. Of course, they're completely illegal. You have a right to free access and egress across state lines. This is enshrined in the Constitution. Now, how that actually works out in court, it's a little bit more like the Hatch Act. It's kind of, it doesn't have teeth. But there has been Supreme Court arguments that have been made off of the access and egress portion of the Constitution. They do have to give you free access and egress. And if you would like to play this game, we can just block you from going across the river. But, I just think that this is just kind of silly. A duty officer for the Cheyenne River Sioux told the Guardian on Saturday that commercial and energy vehicles will be allowed through the checkpoints, but nothing else. Some reservations have reportedly turned away bikers already. Crowds have gathered for the start of the 10-day event on Friday, with many bikers adapting an attitude of defense towards the COVID-19 restrictions that have drastically changed day-to-day life. Screw COVID reads the design of one of the t-shirts being sold. I went to Sturgis. Governor Kristi Noem, a Republican, has supported the Sturgis rally, citing the fact that no infections were reported as a result of the events held by President Trump in the at Mount Rushmore last month. So she avoided a mask mandate and heightened the idea of personal responsibility. I do like the idea of personal responsibility. If you are a person who has a pre-existing condition that gives you a 12x increased chance that you will die. If you are over the age of 45, that is if you're over the average age of death, that's an increased 50% chance that you'll die from COVID. If you're over the average age of death and you get COVID, there's a 5% chance you're going to die. I don't know about you. If I'm 95 or 98 years old and there's only a 5% chance that I'm going to die from COVID, I'm past the average age of death. Why would I care? It's a 5%. You're like, go out. I'm going out with everybody. We're going to bang, guys. Yeah. Roll that dice, baby. So I just don't understand this. Because I personally have, because I am constantly under threat of attack from radical leftist extremists, from my participation in the 2016 Portland anti-Trump protest, and through my participation in the walkaway campaign and the red pill movement, makes me a target. I do get bullied and harassed. I do get death threats occasionally. And from living under this fear of death for a number of years, I particularly am completely done living under fear. I'm not going to let some jerk leftist who's threatening on me on the internet make me afraid to come out of my house, because I would rather die. I would rather die than to have to stay in this house for the rest of my life in fear for me and my family's safety. And so I'm looking at the COVID risk, I've already had people try to murder me many times. It's nothing that I've faced death enough times to where I am not blinking at this thing. It's not at all anything close to what I would be afraid of at all. In fact, I think the lefties are pussies. I really do think that they are cowards. They've shown that they have no spine. They've shown themselves to be brainwashed, incredibly rude, very uneducated, very infantile opinions. Their opinions, in my experience, through hundreds of debates on the internet, have been not well thought out, and free speech has been suppressed, and people, when they do actually attempt to speak the opinions, they usually stumble and sound not very intelligent. That's the vast majority of people. They're wonderful, beautiful people. We should hang out and smoke a bowl. In fact, we can smoke one right now. What about the crazy lefties? I was talking about crazy lefties. I don't understand those. I just don't understand. I mean, it is a lot of people, but were they saying this about the Democrat race riots? Probably none of them said anything about the race riots and people not socially distancing there. Apparently, they think these people can't do this because they're conservative. They're not going to be spouting off liberal dogma like a brainwashed Democrat drone. So this makes them a threat. And the reason why you can tell that their side is so wrong is because I can actually sit up here on camera and insult them for multiple hours almost every single day. And I almost never run out of reasons to criticize them. And it's not that I just hate these people. They're actually fruitcake enough that I can actually fill up an entire show multiple times a week with the stupid shit that they do. In this next article from the Daily Mail, it's not antivirus, eccentric tech tycoon John McAfee, claims he's been arrested in Norway for wearing a lacy thong on his face instead of a mask. Here's the picture. You can also see it in the title screen. Over there on the far end behind the car, you can see John McAfee with panties on his face. Oops. Wrong button. No! Damn it. Oops. Wrong monitor. So, sorry about that. John McAfee took to Twitter on Monday and reported he'd been detained by Norwegian authorities who weren't impressed by his thong mask. I am. The antivirus pioneer, wife Janice McAfee, took over his Twitter page for a few hours later and confirmed he had been placed under arrest. The couple had shared photos showing off the mask made of ladies' underwear. I'm insisting this is the safest available, and I'm refusing to wear anything else for my health's sake, McAfee declared. Also, too, I might add, if you are going to stick a mask on your face, it would be best if it did smell like pussy. In fact, it might actually make you healthier if it does smell like pussy. And as you can see, it still looks like it's got a pretty decent seal around it. I don't know, is that skin around the side, right? Right? I mean, honestly, if you didn't know it was panties, you might not even think about it. I mean, honestly, it does look like a mask. It does. Probably about as effective as the other masks too. But I guess when you're a lefty, you would actually enforce things like that. I'm not sure exactly the mentality that would go through somebody's mind when they're giving somebody arresting somebody for wearing a pair of panties on their face. I mean, but lefties in Europe are some of the most insane, ridiculously stupid people. They are brainwashed drones, just like the Democrats here. It is actually true. Oops. Let's see, what is this? In this next article from NPR, Twitter, Facebook removed Trump post over false claims about children and COVID-19. Both Twitter and Facebook have removed a post shared by President Trump for breaking the rules against spreading coronavirus misinformation. Twitter temporarily blocked the president's election campaign from tweeting until it removed a post with a video clip from Fox News interview from Wednesday morning, which the president urged schools to reopen, falsely claiming children are almost immune from the disease. Well, I'll be damned. So, if they were actually immune to COVID, virtually immune to it, we would be able to then look at the data from the CDC, and we would be able to determine whether or not children have been dying from COVID. So let's do that. Looks like the hard drive is waking up. What's going on? Well, hey, that's easier. All right, here's the chart of the from the CDC. This was gathered. They didn't say exactly which the. If you search the title, it'll pop up. It was definitely a good source. You can count up the deaths, and you can see that there was 26 deaths of people who are under the age of 15. Now, it is true children can be hospitalized. Hold on. Children can get to the point where their parents will take them to the hospital, but parents will take their children to the hospital for stuff that adults wouldn't do. So it's kind of hard to say what's exactly going on there. You'd have to look exactly into it. I haven't looked into the care that the children are receiving. I have looked into it that there are kids do end up getting short of breath, and I think parents probably at that point are freaking the F out. So then they're taking the kids down to the hospital. I don't know. We can obviously see the deaths are almost 50% of them are from people who are past the average age that you die at, which is 78 years old in the United States. I think it's 78.2. And then if you're under 45, the chance of you dying is 138th. Your chance of dying if you're over the age of 44 is 38 times higher. So, as for the rest of us, if we are in lockdown, it's going to increase the chance of me dying from suicide. It's also going to increase the chance that my genetic line is going to die off from me being unable to reproduce. So, an old person's life, or someone who has cancer, because a third of these people who died had a pre-existing condition. I don't know which percentage of them were also over the age of death. That is still a mystery. But as for the rest of us, we have serious... The old people who are going to die are going to die within some period of time soon. They're 92 years old. They're going to make it maybe 3 or 4 more years. Come on. How old are they going to be when they die? But then you're going to make us deal with a lifelong consequences because of these crazy lefties wanting to control everything we do to try to protect somebody else based off of some false data that changes. It's very capricious. It can be whimsical. So as you can see, obviously, Facebook and Twitter spread COVID misinformation when they took down President Trump's tweet claiming it was COVID misinformation. Because obviously, we can go quickly analyze the numbers. We can count them up in our head. 8 plus 5 plus 13 is 26. And these numbers have a sample size of 103,339. That is a large sample size. Very, very, very large sample size. It's probably not going to budge after this until we add in different drugs. If we find some drugs. So there's also a lot of drugs too that are dramatically reducing your chance of dying from COVID. Some of them are steroids. I can't tell you some of the other ones, but I know that there was one steroid that was very promising. There's been a number of things that I've read about that dramatically reduce your chance of dying from COVID. But this is the problem, that why these people are working themselves up in a fit over fake news is because They don't understand that you're trying to minimize your risk of dying from COVID overall your entire life. You're trying to not just die from COVID, but also not die from suicide or from a murder, from increase of murder rates from the pandemic. Because there's 20,000 murders in the U.S. per year. So if you increase that number, if you double that number, and then you add in the all of the other people that died, then from like suicide, then it quickly starts to build up over the number of COVID deaths, which is, I think I did the math on it. It was about 5%. I seem to remember it was 5% of the births. 4 million, and then 200,000 was the number I used. And so I think that was 20, right? I don't know. I'm too tired to think right now. So, obviously, Facebook and Twitter have been engaging in antitrust here because they have a monopoly on social media, those two companies. Now they're saying they're the arbiter of truth. They say they have these sophisticated AI algorithms that can detect hate speech within 89% accurate. And if you know anything about AI programming, you know that's wildly inaccurate. That's not accurate at all. That's like you shoot at the side of a wall, a barn, and you might hit it. That's basically what that means. You might hit, yep, probably going to hit it, right? So then you have to deal with, somebody has to check it if they mark it as hate speech. So then you have a moderator who then trains the robot on whatever the bias of the moderator was. And now they're controlling the facts. And so this is why I started my own fact-checking organization called WikiSpy. It's an open source tool to monitor Wikipedia for tampering by hostile agents of foreign powers. No, hold on. Hostile agents and political bias. Doesn't matter if they're a foreign power. But so if they censor me, if they're trying to remove my speech, which they have done on Facebook, they've marked it as spam because I shared a link to somebody else's website from a news website. This becomes an antitrust action. It's no longer you have just the right to do whatever you want on your own server because you own the server and it's a free country. Now you are a monopoly on that. Sorry, not you. Facebook is now a monopoly on that. And so when they engage in the action of being a fact checker on social media, they have a monopoly on that because first off, they control the search results on who comes up on the fact search. Second, they can ban you if they don't like your facts. Third, they can mark them as spam. Fourth, they can smear your reputation. Fifth, they can control the search results. So you're forced to go through these people in order to distribute your product, to be able to be hired as a fact checker, an independent fact checker. So when they suppress your speech and they say this person's fact is incorrect, for me, that would cause damage to my fact-checking organization. They would then be giving an official label saying that my facts were incorrect. And what is that? That's a conflict of interest. They can't be the arbiter of the truth here as well as the information service. It's like, the best example is there's the New York Times, and they have a comment section on their website. So you go to the New York Times, you can put in a comment, and let's say you put in some copyrighted stuff in a comment. So they have a responsibility under our legal system to delete your copyright. If I put in a copyright claim with them saying somebody violated my copyright laws, a takedown notice, then they can on the comment section, you can't sue the New York Times for the copyright violation in the comment section because that is protected under Section 230, as it's commonly referred to. It's 47 U.S. Code Section 230, which is not the same as the United States Constitution. That makes sense for them to not get sued if somebody else posts something a tort actionable offense. So posting copyright, libel, or slander. This becomes very much so different when Facebook is engaging in a fact-checking service, because now, in order to participate, in order to be in the market with them, you have to be on Facebook, because the market is, I am fact-checking on social media. Fact checker on social media. So, what's social media? Oh, the social media networks where people are at. Okay, which ones? Facebook, Twitter, and then YouTube. So, I'm on all of these platforms. So, if they are removing content, if they're categorizing information, that's what they're supposed to be doing. They're called an information service. They categorize information. It's what they do. You click the like button, you categorize something. I liked it. That's the category it's in. Didn't like it. That's my category. Angry face, sad face. That's my categories. But when they control like over a certain percentage of the market, then you get into the antitrust, because they're editing a post. It's not just a categorization of the post. They have taken the post, they have attached, they've edited it. They'd said that this content we've edited it, and then it was false. It was we've then, at that point in time, they are a competing service that is not a categorization service. So they're saying, I've categorized this as fake news. So what? You're saying you're a fact. So a fact checking, in order to categorize it as a fact, you have to be able to verify that, which requires a third-party entity. If you cannot verify it, it's not a fact. Which means that they have to take on another business entity in the relation to it. It's not just it's not just the information categorization service. They require the third-party independent fact-checking service. But they purchased these people. They paid some people. They hired some people, a group of different independent fact checkers, which they probably would never hire me, but I am available for hire. If those people say that if you on Quora, a different network of people, if they're saying that this was true or whatnot, I mean, it's a lot of it's kind of opinion on a lot of it, but you can see Quora has a different business that, yeah, they have a comment section in there, but like their entire thing is a fact website. I'm very active on Quora. I have over 1,300 views per week on Quora. But as you can see, Quora is not Facebook. Quora and Facebook are two different businesses. They have a different business model. They have a different market. And therefore, when Facebook engages in the action of fact-checking, even though they hired independent fact-checkers, that's kind of like hiring Uber drivers as a contractor. You're saying that you're own your own franchise or whatever. The taxi service companies, like, you rent the taxi, and then you're not their employee. You're just renting the taxi. It's a scam, kind of. But it's antitrust. I think that we need to sue them. They need to not be able to do that. We need to be able to determine what facts are true and not. And if Facebook is going to be the arbiter of the truth, that means that people on that site will then, by de facto, assume that Facebook is the one and only source of truth. This is a dystopic nightmare future that I am willing to fight to prevent Facebook from doing. Definitely not down with the 1984 on this next article from the Daily Mail. Facebook internal investigation uncovers thousands of QAnon pages on the site, followed by millions of people. Social media giant has identified at least 3 million QAnon supporters. QAnon is a conspiracy theory suggesting Donald Trump is battling a deep state. This is not true. No, it's a conspiracy. It's a theory that states that there are a group of people who work around the Washington, D.C. area that are being hired by the federal government. In that area, people commonly work for the federal government, and it is a staple job similar to working at a lumber yard in a city that is like dependent on lumber for money. They call it the deep state because there's multiple generations full of people who've been working in the Washington, D.C. area and the Virginia area, wherever they have all of those big black buildings, the NSA and the all the military bases. These groups of people have a power structure within our government where they give their friends jobs in the federal government, just like every other industry. So this group of people, we know where they work. We know who they work for. We could get the names of the people who are involved. This means that we have a concrete group of people. We know their party affiliation. They're Democrats. Turns out most of the people who are working for the government in these areas have liberal biases. And the reason for this is because they're hiring minorities for these government jobs. They're not allowed to legally discriminate because of the Civil Rights Act. So, what was that? The 1869 on that? Civil Rights Act of 1869? Comment on issue 73 on GitHub if I put the wrong date on the Civil Rights Act. But I do believe it was 1869. So they claim it's just a conspiracy theory. But the fact is, it's not just a theory. We know this group of people exist. They work for the federal government around DC. They're Democrats. So they have had it out for Donald Trump since day one. They've hated Donald Trump because Donald Trump was not in on he was an outsider. Everybody else was insiders. Donald Trump disrupted the entire thing. He was the billionaire, and there was all that fake information about Donald Trump being a Russian asset that came out of the Steele dossier and from fake news from MSNBC that they were spewing out, trying to boost their ratings with that sleazebag Rachel Maddow. And these groups of people have been doing illegal things to stifle Donald Trump's presidency. They've been constantly engaging in leaks. They've been using their post and their contacts in the media to attack Donald Trump. They have been using their popularity on social media to attack Donald Trump. It is an organized attack from the Democrats who work for the federal government near the Washington, D.C. area. The other thing that they say is that they say it's a pedo cult that is in control. I'm pushing back. This isn't true. It's not true. No, it's a hooker network. Every hooker network has underage hookers in it. There's a difference in between those two things, right? Because they're not there to be a pedo. They're there for the hookers, right? That's why they're legitimizing it. But the statistics are, if there's an 18-year-old hooker, statistically speaking, there's going to be a 17-year-old hooker. If there's a 17-year-old hooker, statistically speaking, there will be a 16-year-old hooker, and so on down the line, because humans work like that. Most hookers start when they're teenagers. So it's not a pedophile cult. It's just they're hiring hookers just people hire hookers, man. But then you go over to Europe or Nevada, and then prostitution's legal. So in places where prostitution's illegal, this is demonized as a pedophile network because there's young girls floating around and they don't know. A lot of the shit's just assumptions people are making. That stuff is going on, when a lot of times it's not going on. Sometimes it is going on. It has always been common for people to have sex with young, hot girls. If you don't want to have sex with young, hot girls, you're crazy, man. Underage girls, of course, definitely not. Don't want to be going there. Don't want to be Me Too, not attracted. But there's a lot of misinformation about this QAnon thing. When you look at it, it looks like the Russians could have possibly used Jeffrey Epstein's hooker network. Jeffrey Epstein did not have a pedophile network. This is fake news. That was not real. No, there were some teenagers there. But Epstein ran a modeling agency that was overflowing with super hot, super slutty chicks that would have orgies on the orgy island. And most of them, vast majority of them, were above the age of 18. He was just a rich dude who was fucking anything that could move. And if you were a billionaire, you would probably fuck anything that could move. And you probably might even, too, end up on Lolita Express at some point in time. I'm not trying to justify what he did, but what I'm trying to say is that Epstein did have this network. He is on record having a criminal conviction for engaging in, they're calling it prostitution, some massage thing. I think they were just being sluts, giving some creepy old dudes hand jobs, being masseuses. They're got some older masseuse who's above 18 who's gives masseuses and hand jobs and whatever. And then they get the younger girls into it because the girls are being slutty and they want to get some money. See, there's a difference in between that and having a sex slave network. This is they're saying there's a sex slave network going on. And this is just crazy. This is crazy because in order for it to have a sex slave network, Epstein would have had to have, these people would have had to have been human trafficked. Because sex trafficking means that you're human trafficked for money. So what is human trafficking? One example of human trafficking is where you smuggle people across the border. One example of what is not human trafficking is prostitution in Nevada. It's not. In fact, most liberals would say we should probably legalize prostitution because this is bad for the hookers. So they want to have their cake. They want to eat it too. They want to say, no, Epstein is a horrible person because he hired masseuses and they gave him hand jobs. And they also, at the same time, want to say that prostitution needs to be legal and there's no shame in being a prostitute. But you can't have your cake and eat it too. Either the woman is a prostitute and a whore and they're doing something bad and they should go to jail because it's illegal, or the entire thing is bullshit. I'm going to actually go out as far as to say it looks like Epstein did commit some borderline offenses that we would call him a statutory rapist, but we definitely wouldn't call him a pedophile because that dude has had way more sex with women, like way hotter than any woman that you've ever had sex with. Like, he's had sex with hundreds of them. That's a lot different than a pedophile. That's a huge difference in between those two things. But they want to control the narrative because chances are the people who run Facebook also too have been engaging in this hooker network that it also included underage girls who would give massages and hand jobs to people. That's what it sounded like for most of the incidences that I read from the people who were blamed in the Epstein account. Was that it was masseuses, and it seemed to be most of the incidences were referring to hand jobs. And so I personally think they probably weren't that good looking, and they probably weren't actually getting that much action. They just kind of were getting a tease, but they were too old for the girls to actually want to fuck them, so they just had to keep going. But this, in my mind, I think that this is antitrust, because I just laid out a very compelling case that is not fishy at all to support the QAnon group. So they're saying here that because some people advocated for violence on the page, that they have to shut down the entire thing. But there's a problem with this. This is a political organization. They require social media to be on. When you take them off of Facebook, this is 85% of the people on social media. Twitter is jack shit of the social media market. And then YouTube is the other one. And they also, too, crack down on conspiracy theory content. So there's no other place to go. So if you want to remove these people from because you're saying that they are spreading misinformation, then that goes back into the fact-checking thing that we just went over, where it's like Quora. The fact-checking organization is not like Facebook. The fact-checking organization is like Quora, and it is also highly error-prone. It is not perfect. The consensus is generally made by people communicating and saying a lot of false things until you finally said the right thing. I am a computer engineer, computer scientist. I also make the Oregon Cooler, which is